Hey everyone, it's time to check out the second unit of today's this week's banner. It's 2B Neovision. Is she the real deal premium unit, or does she fare or share the same fate as A2, where she technically isn't premium but still a very good unit? We shall find out in today's review. Now, a small anecdote. Originally, since I was supposed to be on this, but sadly he is sick, so let's all wish him all the best, that he may recover very soon and be back in full force to do all his cool clears that he wanted to do, and that his voice as well as overall health gets better soon. So get well, Sensor. Today I'm on my own doing this review, so let's start. 2B is a Brave Shift unit, like I mentioned, but she does have the same role in both forms, being attacker role. In base form, she is an EN tag chainer, which I personally love. So just make all units, all clash units, tag EN chainers, and with Gucci, Tamaguchi, Gumi. I love it. Now in Brave Shift, she is not a attack unit, but she has a triple Brave Shift LB, which is perfectly fine. I like it for what the Brave LB does, so that's totally Gucci with me. I also really enjoy both the sprites. Like, I'm a huge fan of the base form sprite. It's especially the idle stance, aka the one she usually has when you have no ability queued up. That looks so elegant and good. So both sprites, absolutely amazing. And I love that they did the Machina thing, especially because the origin or Nier Automata had, I believe, at least one, if not two or three instances where you were fighting in that mech that she's using. And those sequences, those were Tohu-esque bullet hell instances. I really loved those sequences in the game where you had to fight huge amounts of missiles and bullet hell scenarios. So much fun. I really can just not emphasize enough how good of a game Nier Automata is, and the overall story, the genius that Yoko Taro is. You all should play Nier Automata. It's an amazing game, and the combat system in general is really good. And I really like that Gumi, or the development team, was able to capture some of it. So the naming schemes of all these abilities, they are very reminiscent of Nier Automata, which, no surprise, the Gumi or the development team always manages to achieve. But also the animation work is fantastic. So the abilities, or the base form LB of 2B, is very reminiscent of her standard finishing combo in Nier Automata, so thumbs up. I really enjoy the attention to detail that especially 2B has gotten in her overall look and feel. So that's why 2B is actually one of my most favorite sprites. She's up there in the top 3 with Sky and Tsukiko for me personally. But enough talk about the amazingness that is the sprite, and let's talk more about the actual kit. Because the actual kit, while it does certain things very well, isn't all that exciting, sadly. So she retains a lot of her abilities, but I mentioned or pointed out two of the most distinct ones here. So in base form, she has Pod Charge, which is her 400% attack and 300% defense and spirit buff to herself, which I do like, especially when you compare this to the most recent JP units that are not that self-sufficient. So most recent JP units, they have either 200% attack buffs or 300% attack buffs, or none at all, which is a huge issue because then they way too much rely on outside buffers. 2B doesn't, and I like it for that matter. In Brave Shift, she has a Void, which is a 25% Katana Imperial for 4 turns, all enemies, good stuff, a 300 attack and defense buff, not the best, but it's fine for what it is, and a 100% lightning and light, resistance buff for all party members, which is pretty good, all things considered, but it's fairly standard even for JP units to have very high resistance buffs to the elements they are strong at. But what I do enjoy is the 4 stacks of Mirage for the entire party. That's a good feature to have. And she casually also fills 400 morale, which is only good for morale fights, but it's nice. I do enjoy it. Now, staying at the Brave Shift, or in general, she has your number 2 type B to be Neo Vision as a passive, which is 300% true double hand attack. Just like I mentioned this on A2, I'm not a huge fan of these 300 true double hand stats. It should either be 400 at this point, or make it 200 and let us pick Master of Fate, for example, because this makes her, or lets her be in a very awkward spot where you are forced to use a materia slot anyway. So whether she has 200% true double hand attack or 300, or it doesn't matter, you eventually end up using one slot, be it the weapon, be it a materia slot, to make up for this inconsistency, so to say. However, I do want to point out, and that's why it's marked especially, is that she gains a TMR passive even when she is wearing her vision card only. Now her TMR, it is very good, but not particularly good for herself. We'll see in a moment why, or in a few minutes why. The STMR, you technically speaking don't want to use the STMR. Why? We'll also talk about it in a few minutes when we get there. Thus, she'd be highly inefficient in what she does if it weren't for that VC vision card thing. Because if you wear the vision card, she gains all these amazing things such as the 200 LB passive, the 5x cap. You still need to use one of the Magister's pieces or Indestructible Light to get her to 6x cap, but that's fine. What I do not like is the 100% Omni Killer thing, because that's pretty much all there is to it. Yeah, she does have Machina and Human Killer additionally in her kit as a passive, but not the rest of it. Now, usually your average JP premium unit does have 200% Omni Killer when wearing the TMR bonus or getting the TMR bonus. So JP units usually have 100% Omni Killer right away at EX plus 2 if I'm not totally mistaken, and then they gain an additional 100% Omni Killer, thus making it 200% when the TMR bonus is active. Why our global units, which are supposed to be far more A, row compressive, B, more more slot efficient anyway, don't get that. I don't understand, but I do have the feeling that the unit designers do not play the game that much. At least I personally wish for the guy who made units such as Roberta Ignitos, Sylvie or Esther to, I don't know, is he even at the company? Lately it doesn't feel like he is, so I don't know. I hope that the guy returns or so, I don't know, or they give the guy the reins over unit designs or unit kit designs if he's still at the company, because that guy, he did very well. And I wish we had units that are as consistent in their kits as it was in the past with units such as Chizuru, Sylvie, Roberta and Ignitos, just to name a few. And then there's also close range attack boost plus 5, which I do personally like. It is a 200% chain ramp. Now please do not get confused about the wording here. The game does a horrible job at differentiating between chain cap and chain ramp. Now, if it does state, like it does at the bottom left here, increased chain modifier for normal and elemental chain by 200%, that means that the unit you're looking at when chaining, such as her tag Yen chain, that one reaches its maximum potential damage output faster. So take 2B as an example. If she just chains on her own at max chain cap, 6x cap, she reaches, or on average, she will have a 5.75 chain cap modifier because she starts at 0 out of 300 on the top right on your screen. Now, if you were to add this into account, she should be, roughly speaking, the math behind this is very complicated and there's a lot of factors to take in, but she should be at 5.8 8-9% was the last time I looked at this. So still not the full 6x cap, but as you can tell, this is already a huge markup and it does increase the damage significantly. Now, ideally, you still want to weave in to be into a chain such that she starts at 6x cap instantly to do her full amount of damage. On the other hand, though, 2B is massively backloaded in her tag EN chain. What that means is that the last 2 hits in particular will hit very, very hard. Just take her up to the target dummy and see how much damage the last 2 hits deal compared to everything that is coming before that. You'd be amazed at how little that chain modifier or chain ramp means in her case, because that damage is so much backloaded. But still, maximizing that damage really wants you to use her at the end of a chain when you have built the chain already. Alright, now let's move on to more details of her kit. Now, just like A2, she does have the Supreme Support weapon, which is a 150% light amp. It only sadly lasts 2 turns, which is very reminiscent of JP units. I was really hoping that because she's a global unit and global units are usually a lot better than JP units, this would be at least 3 or 5 turns ideally, but it isn't. That is sad. But at least she does not have that Phil LB Grandis that JP units have. It's all baked into one, so thumbs up at least for that, even though I'm still not a fan of 2 turns because that's dark vision meta and not particularly Clash of Wills, where we are supposed to burst twice, and you cannot burst twice with such an ability. You will only burst once. But I believe Gumi's thought process here behind this decision was that she still has a 60% light amp, all things considered. Does that really make up for it? I don't think so, but here it is. Oh well. So we got Charge Volt and True Charge Volt. Both abilities do the same, just different elements. So Charge Volt removes all prior imbues and imbues her with lightning. Also imperils lightning by 120%. And the lightning imbue sadly is only 45%, but considering Sylvie is such a force to be reckoned with, especially when it comes to lightning or earth teams, this one is kind of whatever. But for a premium unit, I would expect a 60% amp at bare minimum. Now, she does have, like I mentioned, the same thing for light. Does exactly the same thing with just 2 very important differences. One, it's a 140 imperil to light, which is very good. And, like I mentioned, a 60% amp instead of 40 as it is for lightning. Some brave shifted abilities that are nice to know. True Charge Spear and True Charge Blade are to be named here. Both are 150% killers to Machina and Human, and she herself has 250% killers, sadly 1 turn only. Now I get the feeling that Gumi didn't want this to be way too overpowered by giving her a 3 or 5 turns 250 killer, but we already got this on Chizuru. So I don't quite understand why 2B doesn't get to have that same perk, especially when 2B is a premium unit. It's just something I would love to ask the devs about, what the thought process behind this was. There's no good reason for me to nerf or, well, not have to be as good as Chizuru in that regard. Just like A2, she also has Resonant Force, and that one amps her Limit Burst, the base form Limit Burst to be precise, by 1x outside morale fights, and by 31x in total for morale fights. Now, what we will see in just a second, her base form Limit Burst has 2 instances, and that means it's a total of 62 because it hits twice. And both hits are individual hits with different modifiers, meaning items such as Tie vs. Spirit also stack, or not stack, but the effects stack, meaning she benefits twice from it. Speaking of Limit Burst, here it is. So the base form limit burst, Yorha Slaughter Dance. It's a tag attack with EN frames, the good kind of EN frames, unlike A2 who has really bad and delayed frames for Extreme Nova. She is your standard Extreme Nova, which is very nice. I also really enjoy the detail with her pod chipping in on the damage. It's a cool gimmick. I like it a lot. So the first hit is 150x, the second 250x. It gets scaled with morale up to 200x for the first one, or for the first chain, and the finisher move is a 325x in morale instances, meaning for your average Dark Visions clear, she has a 400x modifier, which gets obviously amped by the Brave Shifted Limit Burst. That one is a 25 in parallel to swords, great swords, katanas, axes, hammers, spears, throwing weapons, and fists. 3 turns, cool stuff, I like it. Also, as you can tell, this one boosts her limit bursts, meaning you should definitely, absolutely use it before you use her base form limit burst. And it also does half decent damage, 100x and 200x for the 2 individual hits, going up to 200 and 300x respectively when in morale fights. And lastly, after all that damage is done, she amps or increases the LB modifier of Yorha Slaughter Dance, meaning her base form limit burst, by 85x. But as we've learned, this is a 2 instances LB, meaning the total modifier increase is 170x, which means it's a 570x LB in total for 2B. Very good stuff. Outside of Clash of Wills, that is. So 500x, 570x outside Clash of Wills, thumbs up, it's really good. Alright, now let's move on. There's really nothing else here to say other than I really like the Brave Shift Limit Burst. Like that. Also, please note that Brave Shifted Limit Burst is also almost a perfect loop. Just boom, she lands, she goes back, and it almost perfectly loops in that the mech flies up again. So cool. I love the attention to detail, and overall it's just so cool to have that mech transform into a fighter and just shoot from that massive gun. It's so cool. I absolutely love it. Alright, let's check out the TMR, STMR and vision card here. The TMR is really cool. So it allows the use of katanas. Yeah, that might not seem that cool, but when you consider that the allow use of katana materials are super rare, and both of the two that we had so far are also time limited, this is your best chance at getting a 3rd copy. And I personally, I got 5 2Bs if I'm not totally mistaken. I now have 5 more allow use of katana materia, so yay. Furthermore, it does 60% attack and 50% human machina killer, and it's physical and magical. I forgot to state that. And the Super Trust Master is a katana, 2-handed with your standard katana variants, 1.25 to 1.75x, 230 attack, meaning it's the same as for Harukaze, which is Chizuru's STMR. This one does not have 30% evasion and 5FFBE crystals on it, or does it? Now I'm confused. Did I not change this? Let me really quickly check whether that's actually the case. Oh boy, I hope I didn't make a mistake here. No, it is. It's actually what it is. Okay, so as you can see, I did not really check out the STMR because I haven't used it myself. So 30% evasion, which is very nice. 5FFBE crystals, which is also very nice and comes in handy because she is kind of starving for LB crystals, especially when you don't use her 150% amp. It's going to be a little bit tricky to fill the LB gauge. This helps tremendously. And exclusive to 2B variants, she gains 100% true double-hand attack and 500 static attack. Meaning, with all things considered, and especially considering the STMR of A2, which also has 100% true double hand, you are better off not using this weapon and use the Dark Vision's two-handed katana instead, if you have the 10,000 spare dark matter for that 4 or 5 attack katana. But still, this is a decent option, but all things considered, the Dark Vision's katana is better on 2B. The vision card, I already talked about this yesterday, so I will just briefly go through it. It's a 150 attack card with 100 attack and 50% human marker killer, physical magical, 100% HP, 50 LB damage, and 500 static attack for near units only. The vision card itself is totally fine. It's just that you will sometimes not end up using it. Depending on the killer types, it might be a better idea to use Tidus's vision card. It has less static attack, it has the same base attack, but it has chain cap increase, and that allows you to more freely gear for killers. But truth be told, she isn't really that hard to gear for killers at all. Like the build I used, or I simmed her at, was Aquatic Insect, which is very hard to pull off, and she still easily managed to do 300 to both. So with all this considered and looking at the full picture here, this vision card is very good for her and it does fare well, but there are some slight instances where it might be a slight upgrade to use Tidus's vision card instead. So all in all, the item selection is good. The vision card might seem rather dull. We had more exciting ones, especially Lara Croft, for example, was a very cool one with that ribbon included in it. So I would have preferred something like this instead of a very safe bet that is the vision card of 2B and A2. Also, I don't like that it's just a static image. They could have used any of the very cool scenes like they could have done from the intro of the game, where 9S and 2B just, for example, explode to save the day because it failed, and the huge enemy machinas, they were overrunning that fuel station or whatever it was. So that would have been a cool scene, for example. And there's plenty of other options or opportunities that I could have gone for with the vision cards, but yeah. That's just a minor gripe, and it doesn't really overall diminish the value of the unit. But what I do not like is that they didn't license Nier Automata music, when every other game that is also currently running Nier Automata collaborations, they do get Nier Automata music on their stuff, and we don't. So it's kind of disappointing, to be honest. Alright, so let's check out damage calculations. As always, pause the video if you want to check out the parameters of my spreadsheet. We'll be going to the build, and I added something new for this. So as you can tell, this slide may seem a little bit overloaded, but we'll get to the gist of it. So one thing I do want to point out is that the builder at the time of making this video wasn't updated. So the builder right now does not realize that the vision card activates the TMR bonus. So in this case, it does state, for example, that she doesn't have 300 insect killer. You wouldn't use Hateful Agent in that case. You would use something else, the 75 Insect Buster, for example, and that would allow you to get 300% insect killer as well, next to 300 aquatic killer. So rather easy to build still for both these very rare types, and she's an overall very, very easy to gear unit. And due to request, one of my friends / viewers requested that I also include maximum burst rotation, so I did. It does fit fairly nicely into this slide. So first of all, if you are fighting a Machina and human or human boss, you would obviously delay this a turn and include her buffs, meaning the 2 abilities in Brave Shift. But the actual rotation is you use her Brave Shifted Limit Burst. You then go back to the base form to use the Supreme Support Weapon, which technically speaking is also available in Brave Shift if you have an outside 400% attack buff, for example. You would only use that Supreme Support Weapon in case of Light Element, and you'd be Gucci. But in an ideal scenario, or in a scenario where you don't have that 400% outside buff, you would go back to base, use that Supreme Support Weapon, use Pod Charge and RO40 Blade to do some chip damage, which is just nice to have, I guess. And then on the third turn, you would use your Slaughter Dance, her base form, Limit Burst. That's pretty simple, to be honest. And it does get more nuanced if you, say, have a fight where you cannot use light, but say Earth or Lightning. You can then just use Sylvie instead to amp, and on turn 2, in this 3-turn rotation that you see here, you would instead use Tyvus' Spirit, which then boosts up her damage or total modifier to 630x, which is very, very nice. Okay, so let's check out her damage. Now in this calculation, I did not include Sylvie's buff. I probably should, honestly. So whenever you take a look at my sheet in the next few days, it will include Sylvie's 20x increase, meaning she is a 590x, because for whatever reason, I just noticed I have Sylvie's LB amplification on every other unit, just not on 2B, so that's my mistake. I will fix this after the video. So, but all in all, 2B sims slightly lower than A2 outside of Clash of Wills. This may change if I include the 20x increase from Sylvie. And please keep in mind that this number is still massively inflated by the 150% amp. However, even if we got rid of that 150% amp and just went with the standard 100% amp for Earth and Lightning, she is still fairly well above Van Harma, because in that case she can use Tyvus' Spirit and gains the upper hand at 630 or 650x with Sylvie included. So there isn't really much of a loss here. It's just that she could be, or always performs the strongest with light in mind. Okay, and in Clash of Wills, she flips the roles with A2, or flips the positioning with A2, and due to better scaling of, or better morale scaling of her LB than Hateful Blade does for A2, 2B is the better unit, and is simming at 130% of Chizuru's damage for this fight. Now, depending on what races the next Clash of Wills in December has, things might change, especially when we are not able to use light and instead probably ice. That's what every Clash of Wills, or every one, last year's Clash of Wills was, so it was ice focused. So the next one will probably ice focus too, and it's going to be interesting because we don't have that many great ice options, one of it being Freyevia, obviously. So we'll see. And the damage overall of 2B will fall more in line with Samurai Chizuru outside of light, although it will still be massively in favor of 2B, because she still can use things such as Tyvus' Spirit. Alright, and I added one more slide because I have gotten the feeling that people still do not understand what my ratings entail. So if you want to really get to know what a 1 out of 10 is, what a 5 out of 10 is, what a 10 out of 10 is, please pause the video, read this through, remember it, because a 1 out of 10 does not mean a unit is bad. And the same applies to 2s and 3s and 4s. They all have their good stuff, but it's not always on point. Like, it's not always applicable to a broad general case. Broad general cases are usually in the higher echelons, 8, 9s and 10s. Those are units that you will use pretty much all the time. And especially 10s and 9s, those are units that either shape or define a meta, such as Chizuru, Paladin Sylvie, Roberta Ignitos, Tsukiko. Those are units that are generally used everywhere, every time, and make up for team building, and are centered around team building in particular, such as Paladin Sylvie or Shrine Maiden Tsukiko. So yeah, now let's check out 2B's rating with that in mind, and she is a solid 8 out of 10. And funnily enough, she is only the third 8 out of 10 I have rated within the last year and a half. The other two units are, I know Sky is one, and I would have to go back one slide. Whoops. The other one was Lara Croft, exactly. So Lara Croft and Sky are also 8 out of 10s by my rating. So 2B is another one of those cases, and deservedly so. So let's check out the good and bad side of things. So the good side of things: strong TMR, STMR, high damage in both Clash and Dark Visions. Has a very good vision card. That 140 Light Imperil is strong. 35% Katana Imperil is super good. Not as good as the 45% Sword Imperil on units such as Titus, but still 45% Katana Imperil is something to keep in mind, especially because it also boosts Chizuru's damage, who is still a very strong unit in both Dark Visions and Clash of Worlds. And also, I do understand why Gumi did this, because Sky can also wear katanas, and allowing Sky to hit on a 45% katana imperil would mean another balancing issue. So I totally get where they're coming from with this. 2B also gets +2 points, just like A2, for an additional bonus. The first bonus being that she's strong and super useful in both Dark Visions and Clash, and also marks a new damage high. Now, I don't look at them individually, A2 and 2B that is, and that's why both units, because they are 10% more than the previous highest damage dealer, gain that +1. So that's why she has +2 on there. Now, the bad side of things, she, even though she is a very good unit overall, has glaring kit issues. One of it, like I mentioned, being that 100% Omnic Killer from passives. And the other thing being that it's only 2 turns of 150% amp. Sure, balancing and all that stuff, but still we are in the global version of the game. Gumi always says that the global version is different from the JP version, yet they make the same decisions the JP server does with respect to such buffs. Why is it not 3 turns or 5 turns? Just make it, and risk having some balancing issues. It's totally fine to do things differently and letting things slide out of control. We've done this previously with units Chizuru or Sky. It's totally fine, and it only lasts for a couple of months anyway before the next best unit comes. And we do have leader skills coming up, and those would certainly certainly shake things up anyway. So 3 or 4 months of 5 turns 150% amp would not have hurt the bottom line here. In fact, 2B would have been an even better pick in that case. Also deducted 1 point for her weak party support. Yeah, she does have resistance buffs, mirage buffs, some killer buffs. That's the bottom line though. It's really the bottom of the barrel. There should have been more. Just looking at Chizuru, for example, she has so much more supporting stuff, and that's why Chizuru is a 9 out of 10, because Chizuru really does a lot of things. But then again, Chizuru does have the support attack in base form, which 2B lacks. I would have liked it if it were in the Brave Shift, but I guess that's where the lack of party support is coming from. Another thing I do want to mention, and it is so bad that I deducted a point for this, and this is why I waited a little bit longer with 2B's review, because I really wanted to check her out outside that very tailor-made Clash of Wills. Now, I took her to 2 trials yesterday. One I already posted is my Rafflesia video, where I defeated the boss in 5 turns, and in that 5-turn fight I already realized that 2B has massive MP issues, and you technically cannot gear for this. Furthermore, she has very low bulk, not only SPR, but the defense is a little bit higher, so I didn't include this in the slide, but both defense and spirit are very low. It's in the lower 200 sides of at EX +3, which isn't good. That's Sky tier of level bad, and it kind of shows on fights such as Rafflesia that use MP absorbs, and MP absorbs usually go with a hybrid attacks, meaning it's both taking defense and spirit into account, and 2B got drained pretty hard unless I included very high general mitigations and all that stuff. So That's something to keep in mind, and it grinds my gears so much, especially in a fight against Catastrophe. 2B runs out of mana for me by turn 8, and that's no bueno. And that's why I deducted a full point for that. Now, this isn't an issue in Clash of Wills or Dark Visions, definitely not in Dark Visions, but it is if you want to use her in trials that exceed turn 5 especially. So all in all, still a very good unit. No real complaints other than the ones I mentioned. So it's fair to say that 2B is very, very similar to Samurai Chizuru in what she does and what she is capable of. But 2B has the upside of not being a transhift unit, which is very annoying for Chizuru, but I've never had really issues with it. It's just that I would prefer Chizuru to be a true Brave Shift unit. But then again, Chizuru has far more roam compression and far more support than 2B, whereas a 2B, on the other hand, really excels at delivering exceptional burst that is way higher than Chizuru could ever reach. Even if you amp up Chizuru with the Smile card, etc., 2B will always perform better when things are equal. So, yeah, she is a good unit, but is she premium worthy though? No, definitely not. There are way too many bells and whistles missing for her to be a real premium unit, which was, well, coined by JP units and global units. They always do something that really annoys me. For Esther it was the field, for Wilk it was the clunky rotation, for A2 it's being just a clunky unit all in all, and for 2B it's that she's missing 200% arm the killer right out of the gate, for example. And that's pretty much the end of this review. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know if you would like me to always include the maximum burst rotation for units. I will always keep that rating explanation in upcoming reviews. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of the evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you're from. And we'll see each other either later this week or at the very latest on Thursday. See you then. Bye bye.